Why did God allow the ancient people's children and David's infant son to die for the sins of their ancestors, despite that scripture says that in Deuteronomy 24:16, it says, "Parents are not to be put to death for their children, nor children put to death for their parents. Each will die for their own sins." Now, I don't know if this is the same person who asked this question recently to Elisa Childers on her channel, but if not, she actually recently had someone on that tried to answer this question as well. I'll go ahead and give my perspective, but I will be honest, part of my answer is I don't know, full disclosure. I too share some confusion over some of the stuff that's happened in the Old Testament. But again, I will do my best and hopefully it will be helpful. So, for context, this is recorded in 2 Samuel 12. This is where Nathan is telling David that he's going to be punished for taking Bathsheba for himself and setting up her husband to die in battle. And Nathan tells him that their son, Bathsheba's and David's, will die because of David's sin. Now, some people have asked how this is consistent. So if David sinned, why is the baby being punished? And why would any child be supposedly held accountable for the sins of someone else? So, fair question. Now, something simple that I think that we all should do whenever it comes to this sort of thing is simply read what this is about, right? Like, what is this scripture in Deuteronomy saying, and who is it written to? So this is a section in Deuteronomy that are moral laws for the people. In verse 16, it's saying that people are responsible for their own sin and that this is a law that God has given to the people of Israel to follow. This is a human judicial system set up for them. And my main point with this is that this is not the same standard that God has. We demonstrably see this throughout many acts in the Old Testament where God, being the author of life, the giver and taker, as Job says, has the ultimate authority to do so. So this specific standard of not punishing people for the sins of another was given to humans. Now, let me elaborate more on this point, because I'm sure a lot of people want more than just that, because I think it has a lot to do with why a lot of this stuff happened in the Old Testament. God has full wisdom on when to take a life and when not to. And now if one believes that there is an afterlife, which we do, then death is not the end. So for the Christian, we don't really die, we just change location. It's the end of temporary life here and ushers them into eternal life with them. God chose to end their life, just like he chooses to give them life. And in the case of David's baby, I think this makes sense. Also, this is where I think we've missed something important. God was responding to evil. The reason why God passed judgment in this way was very specific to his sin. David conceived a baby in the act of adultery. David was not just a casual character in the Old Testament. There's an important principle to think about here. The closer you are to God and the more revelation you have, the higher of a standard he's going to hold you to. The more spiritual privilege you have equals the more responsibility you have. You mess up, the higher the consequences. I believe this is why we see such strong judgments on Israel when they saw more of God than any other humans on earth, yet still defied him. And the same with the other people in the Old Testament as well. I think that it's the same thing with the Pharisees in the New Testament. Jesus told them that they are guilty of blaspheming the Spirit. They saw works that nobody would ever see in human history like how they saw, yet they still denied him. Now, I also find it really interesting that God carried these acts out and spoke judgment through the prophets to people, like Nathan told to David. So I think that instead of blessing David's affair with a child, God sovereignly exercised his almighty wisdom and judgment by taking the life that was given to David back to himself. And even David says that he'll see his baby again, but not during his earthly reign. So people might disagree with that explanation, and that's okay, but that is my perspective, my current perspective on this question. Now, does this answer every single deed in the Old Testament that God did that we can't explain? No, it cannot. But that's my current understanding of this question, and it might develop as time goes on and I learn more, but hopefully it'll help with some perspective on these things.